He's been traveling around a lot. I think he might travel more than me.
Nomad capitalist.
The nomad capitalist.
The nomad capitalist.
There are no rational arguments to support the ideas which created this country.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on Earth.
This is the future of freedom and opportunity. This is the Nomad Capitalist Report.
From Wrocław, Poland. Hello, traders. My name is Andrew Henderson. This is the Nomad Capitalist Report. Welcome to our little radio show here that airs on stations across the land of the free and here at nomadcapitalist.com. It's great to be back with you and great to be doing shows that are available online now. If you didn't hear my show from a couple weeks ago, we talked to Heather Thorkelson, and I also talked about why some of our missing radio shows have not made their way to you. So it's great to be doing more shows and talking to all of the nomad capitalists out there, and great to be with you. If you are listening online, I need to ask you to do me a favor, though. I need your help. Every month at nomadcapitalist.com, more and more people are coming and reading our articles, listening to radio shows, watching YouTube videos, joining our club, the Nomad Society, shopping in our online store. Those numbers are increasing every single month, and it's because of people like you who are dedicated to what we're doing and who appreciate what we're doing and fighting for your ability to find freedom in the world, fighting for your ability to maximize your prosperity by looking beyond your own borders. And I want to expose more people, even more people, to the message that we are spreading, because this is important. You've got a culture in the United States that is hell-bent on destroying success. If you're running a successful business right now in the United States or in many of the bankrupt Western countries, you are the villain. I was just in Denmark a week ago, and you would not believe how expensive things are in Copenhagen. You know Denmark is an expensive place. You can read that they have a 56% top tax rate on income. They have all kinds of other taxes on various social policies and other nonsense. It's an outrageous place for excess taxation. And because of that, everything there is extremely, extremely expensive. I actually had a lunch just outside of the city center at one of the top hotels there, and lunch with a drink and a little appetizer and an entree cost close to $80. And you can look at the receipts and you can see the 25% sales tax, and you can understand why things are so expensive, but that's just scratching the surface. Denmark last year, I believe it was last year, came out with new regulations on all sorts of picky-uni topics that you would never imagine a government to come down with regulations on. One of those regulations we wrote about at nomadcapitalist.com, which was a decision by some board that hair salons couldn't charge more to cut women's short hair than they could to cut men's hair. If you've ever been to a salon, obviously you know that men can go in and get haircuts relatively cheap. Most of the time, men's haircuts are pretty straightforward. And those salons, because of apparently the extra work or the extra value, or just because they can get away with it, those salons charge more to cut women's hair. Well, the Denmark Board of Hair Cutting Prices came in and said that's not fair. If a woman has short hair, you have to charge her the same price. You can't have a real free market. You can't say that maybe you want to provide women with a better service and charge them more. You can't do that. We're going to come in and shut you down on that. We're going to tell you how much you can charge. It's price controls. And that kind of regulation is part of what is driving costs through the ceiling in Denmark. Before Copenhagen, I was in Helsinki in Finland. Prices there are equally outrageous. I had an Indian dinner. I love Indian food. And the first night I got in, I went and I had an Indian food dinner. I had a glass of wine, and the whole thing I think was about $40. And it's the same thing in Finland. The government is out of control. They are opposed to business. They're opposed to entrepreneurs. They want to saddle people who want to invest their money or start a business or create some kind of wealth with all kinds of regulations, all kinds of requirements, all kinds of forms, all kinds of taxes, all kinds of everything. They make it very, very, very difficult for you to succeed in those countries. And I was very excited a couple months ago, right after Thanksgiving in the United States, we put out an article called The Top 5 Most Valuable Passports for Visa-Free Travel. It's still one of the most successful articles on our site today. It gets tens of thousands of people come and look at it every month. And there were a couple days back in November, early December, where we had literally about 100,000 people from Finland come and view that article. Because Finland, here's the spoiler alert, Finland was ranked the #1 country by me, based on a lot of different data, the #1 passport to have for traveling all over the world. And so when the word got out that Finland was #1, it got all over the Finnish social media scene, and we got tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of visitors from that. And I was excited about that because we need to get the word out to people around the world in countries not just like the United States, but in countries like Finland, in countries like Denmark, in many of the countries here in Western Europe that have said that success is evil, and those who participate in it or seek to participate in it will be demonized. Where are these countries? Well, we talk about the United States. We talk about the UK. We talk about much of continental Europe. Many people think that Australia is some kind of safe haven, but in reality, Australia is just a few years behind the United States in some regards, and actually worse than the United States in other regards. I've talked to a few Australians. They've been telling me just how bad things are getting in Australia. So there are a lot of countries in the Western world that have this attitude, that are raising taxes, that are making things more difficult for business. People like you who just want to go out there and find a way to make a buck, you are the enemy. And so here's what I need you to do. I'm here pumping up the articles. I'm here doing the videos. I'm here hosting this radio show. And I need more people to know what we're doing, because this is an important message for freedom and for the ability of people to create their own path in life, to become successful, to make money. In my opinion, that's a fundamental right of humans, is to go out and to make a living in whatever way we please. So if you like the message that we're sharing here on this show, if you believe that freedom and prosperity is under attack in the Western world, I need you to share this show with a friend. Tell a friend, tell 5 friends, tell 100 friends. Get the word out. Share this show or your other favorite episode of the show on social media. Put it up on Facebook, share it on Twitter, email it to a friend. Get the word out. If you are already telling your friends about our show, make sure you're subscribed to this show on iTunes so you don't miss a single episode. I know some people who listen to the show do it on their local radio stations, whether it's in Chicago, the Los Angeles area, New York, etc. But if you're listening online, or even if you're not, even if you're listening on the radio, go on your computer, go onto iTunes, and subscribe to the Nomad Capitalist Report. Make sure you don't miss a single episode, because we put a lot of stuff out there that you need to know. And while you're there, lastly, while you're there on iTunes, do us a favor, leave us a review. Let the world know what you think about the show, and hopefully a 5-star review. Because we need to spread the word so that more and more people understand what we are fighting for. More and more people need to understand that they have options. If you have friends who believe that they have to stay in the United States because it's the only civilized country on the earth, they should know that they have options. If you have friends who believe that they have to stay in the United States because they'll get killed by a terrorist if they go somewhere else, they need to know that they have options. If you have friends who believe that they have to pay 50% of their hard-earned income in taxes to some criminal government in order to receive quote-unquote civilization, they need to know that they have options. And so I appreciate your sharing the word and getting the word out about this radio show and about Nomad Capitalist with your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, etc. One of the things that I'm going to be doing, by the way, when people go to Nomad Capitalist and they get on our newsletter and they follow the stuff that we're doing, is the opportunity to connect with me and many of my experts. We've talked before, I'm not going to harp on it today, but we've talked about the Nomad Society, my private club. We're adding more and more special events for people like you who want to come and hang out with me and the people who are in my inner circles. For example, we're having a very special dinner later this fall. I believe it's in September. We haven't nailed it down exactly. Maybe we have. But it's, I believe, in September. We're going to have a very special dinner. And myself and a few other people from my inner circle are going to get together. We're going to be at a 5-star restaurant. And we're all going to go out and have a nice dinner and talk to members of the Nomad Society who come to this dinner one-on-one. We're going to help them build their offshore plans. Or if they already are offshore, we're going to help them expand upon their plans. So there's a lot of good benefits to sharing the word about what we do here at Nomad Capitalist with your friends, and I appreciate your helping us do that, because this is what we are fighting for. And at the end of the day, it benefits all of us for more people to understand that they don't have to be trapped inside a society that does not value their labor, their capital, and their accomplishments. There are places on Earth where those things are valued. All right, Gerald Celente is coming up in a few minutes. First of all, let's go through a few of the news items. It is, one of the great things, I'll be honest with you, one of the great things of being outside of the USSA is that I don't, and I'm going to ask Gerald Celente about this, I don't follow every silly news story that goes on in the U.S. And when you live outside of the U.S., you realize very quickly that so much of the news that you're being fed it like you're cattle on a farm somewhere. You're being force-fed this drivel that has nothing to do with anything, and it doesn't enrich your life, it doesn't make you smarter, it doesn't make you able to more critically think about how the world works. It's just drivel. I didn't realize, for example, I was talking to Jeff Berwick the other day, I did not realize until just the other day, neither of us did, that March Madness has just ended in the United States. I guess that's front page news in the United States. Not that the government is spying on you, not that unemployment is still out of control when you look at the real numbers, not the government propaganda numbers. Not the fact that the economy is not growing, not the fact that the Funny Money Express is continuing ad nauseum, and by the way, it's not working in Europe. No, none of those things are front page news, but a basketball tournament is front page news. I'm looking at today's headlines. Jeb Bush is wooing Southern Baptists for a 2016 run for president. I don't know if I'm the first to say this, but I'd like to throw my hat in the ring to be among the first to say, who effing cares? This is the media in the United States, folks. This is what it is. It's so ridiculous. I can't help but laugh at it. Jeb Bush is going to run for president against Hillary Clinton. That's the big story. It's like the media they have the two enemies to pit against each other. They have to have the story, the big story. It's Bush versus Clinton. And meanwhile, the media is ignoring all of the things that really matter. All the things that I just talked about, how you can't start a business without having to fill out 92,000 forms and go to 27 different agencies and worry about getting sued every minute of your life. None of that's front page news, but they want to put together this Bush versus Clinton thing because, I guess I don't entirely understand why, but when you really study this closely, you understand the very simple fact, which no one's talking about, which that is, politics in the United States is a dynasty. How many President Bushes do we need to have, let alone how many do we need to have in one's lifetime? In 2016, by the time the election rolls around in 2016, I will be 32 years old. I will have just turned 32 years old. And if Jeb Bush is elected president, it will be the third Bush president in my lifetime. Not a 90-year-old lifetime, a 32-year-old lifetime. Does anybody else think that that's a problem? Does anybody else think it's a problem that the political class in the United States is nothing but a ruling class of dynastic leaders with families who go and run different branches of government and then eventually throw their hat in the ring for some top prize as if it's a kind of a beauty pageant, as if our subservience to them is just the latest notch on their bedpost? This is the kind of thing that people complain about in banana republics. People talk about countries where some guy serves for 30 years and how it's so corrupt and how he's oppressing the people. And that may be true, but let me tell you something. The people running the United States, they may not be in the limelight every minute of the day, but they're part of the same ruling class that never goes away. You don't think the Bushes are still pulling strings? You don't think that the Bush family, with all of the different people in politics around the country, you don't think that they have influence beyond compare? This is why the United States is really no better. And look, go say the same for any other Western country. No better than the banana republics that people are so afraid of becoming. No better. If you're staying in the United States and voting for Jeb Bush because you think it's the lesser of two evils and that's going to solve all of your problems and that's going to restore freedom and tranquility and prosperity to your country, you are insane. He's just the latest figurehead for a family that is one of the few that runs the country the same way that they run the country in any other place that you call a third world. I'm going to talk to Gerald Celente about this too. I hope we'll get into that with Gerald Celente, who's coming up next. So don't forget, please share this with your friends, your neighbors. Tell them to go to nomadcapitalist.com, subscribe to our show on iTunes, and make sure you're getting the latest stuff we have to offer. We'll continue this with Gerald Celente from Trends Journal coming up next. Nomad Capitalist Report, it's nomadcapitalist.com. I'm Andrew Henderson. I'm Andrew Henderson. This is the Nomad Capitalist Report at nomadcapitalist.com and on radio stations across the land of the free. Always pleased to welcome the great Nostradamus of our modern era, the man who has predicted so many of the modern trends successfully, so much so that he publishes the research paper, the Trends Journal. You can get it at trendsjournal.com. It's worth the nominal fee that he charges for all this great research. Gerald Celente is the man behind said Trends Journal. You've seen him on the Today Show, all the way on down to here on this Nomad Capitalist Report. Gerald Celente, welcome to the show.
Good. Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Are you? Have you been following this March Madness? Being outside of the United States and not watching the mainstream media, I just realized today that something had been going on in that regard. Are you following this?
You mean the basketball stuff?
Yeah.
Nah. When I was a kid, I did.
This is like what they do to keep everyone away from like focusing on all the nonsense that's going on with money printing and the market madness. This is like the great taming of the masses.
Of course, and it is really nothing new about it. I mean, look what's going on with the Cartoon News Network, or like they like to call themselves, CNN. And it's virtually every day. The headline is, did they hear that pinger from that Malaysian airplane? This is a ship lost at sea. This isn't anything new. But it's every day since the plane was lost in early March. It has been the headline story and the story throughout the day.
Look, it's a tragedy. Obviously, I'm a fan of Malaysia, and it's a shame because I'm a Malaysian Airlines flyer. So perhaps for some, it's not a shame. But
but I'm just saying this is a ship lost in sea.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is a couple hundred people. How many people died in Iraq yesterday? How many in Syria? Look at the atrocities going on, and this is what they're focusing on. Every day. Pings haven't been heard in days. This is a plane that's lost. Okay, it's a tragedy, it's terrible, but let's look at some real other stuff going on. Every single day. And what they didn't talk about in scouring the ocean is that they found enough garbage to create a whole size of another continent. They couldn't find the lost continent of garbage, but they talk every day about an airplane. So when you talk about March Madness, this is just another element of it.
It's the modern day bread and circus, and one of the big things that is really going on right now in the land of the free that I think people are maybe I'd like to think they're standing up to it, but I'm not so sure. And that's Obamacare. You've had a lot of trends and predictions about Obamacare and the greater socialization of medicine and less medical freedom. Talk about what you see coming. Are people going to jump onto this sinking ship?
No, they're jumping on in very small numbers, and what's really going on has been a great consolidation because of this, of the whole profession. I mean, doctors that have been in business for years are selling out. The companies are all merging. The same thing is happening. The hospitals are merging one after another. They can't keep up with all the paperwork and the difficulties of working with the government, so it's becoming consolidated, just like every other element of business in this country and many other Western countries. The multinationals are taking over. These huge corporations own everything. And so that's what's really the fallout of Obamacare, and the restrictions are great. The payments that you have to pay are very high, and we're facing an employment crisis in this country. They just had the numbers come out last Friday, and everybody was cheering. 192,000 jobs were created, and they expected 206,000, so it's pretty much on target. And then you look at the numbers of jobs, Andrew, and who got them and where they're going. You want a job as a waiter or a bartender? There was a job for you. You want a job as a home health aide? Doesn't pay much money. Matter of fact, you don't even have to pay them the minimum wage. There's a job for you. You want a temporary job? You could get one. So when you add that on, and then the cost of what it's costing for medical care, this winter was really cold in the States. I mean, it was one of the, in most of the states. And our electric bills went up 38% in 1 month. So the jobs stink. The corporations, by the way, had their best profitable year in 85 years. It was the worst year in 65 years for income in the people. And then they have Obamacare and, just to make things worse. This isn't, I'm all for socialized medicine if it really, really worked. But the way they're doing it here, it stinks. And really, the whole system began to break down when they had HMOs back in the late 80s, middle 80s, when they came out with that scam that started the whole downward spiral and consolidation of healthcare into the hands of a few.
Well, I'll tell you this. I was just in Denmark. I was in Finland paying $40 for fish and chips plates, and seeing the massive expenses, and the 56% tax rates, and then the 10% social income contributions in some of these socialist miracle countries. There's no way you're going to convince me that socialized medicine would work. It sounds nice, but here's what troubles me is the United States has the worst of all worlds. You've got a country that the people who want that system, who want the big hand of government, they believe, this is a capitalist system. What you're describing is the ultimate crony capitalist system, and it was interesting. I was reading in the Financial Times yesterday on a train the fact that Nigeria just revised its GDP upwards by like 90%. Over the last 20 years. And people say, well, what a third world banana republic. They don't even have their numbers straight. Well, what a third world banana republic that the United States has created an environment that a few closely tied corporations can control the entire healthcare market and drive everyone's costs up.
Well, that's exactly what happened. That's why I'm saying, what's going on now isn't working. What used to work, they killed. Because of the what you call the capitalism that's really not.
Right.
Look, it was very clear. 4 words made it 100% clear that it's not capitalism in the United States. It happened in 2008 when the Great Recession hit. Too big to fail. There's no such thing as too big to fail in capitalism. You rise and fall on your own merits. Unless you're a member of the White Shoe Boys, one of the Wall Street gangs, the financial criminals, or the other multinational thieves, then we'll bail you out. It's the merger of state and corporate powers. It's fascism. And you can see it in all its different shades. There's no demonstrations going on in this country. They'll beat the hell out of you if you go out in the streets. There's surveillance 24/7. You don't get out of line over here. It's fascism is taking over the nation. That's all it is. And Obama's the front for fascism, as was Bush and Clinton, and Carter. Carter was the first guy that really started the whole ball rolling. The deregulation of the airline industry and breaking up the Glass-Steagall Act, that was the first part of the banking industry. There was no such thing as interstate banking in this country in my whole life as a kid. Because they put these laws into place during the Great Depression, following the crash of 29, so the banks wouldn't be able to steal all our dough. So it's one after another. It's fascism in the U.S. It's not capitalism. We have every 4 years in this democracy, we get to vote for one or two of the political jerks. That's freedom in America. We get a choice between one or two of the political jerks from the Bloods of the Crips, the murderers and thieves. They like to call themselves Democrats and Republicans.
You and I don't agree on all of this, but obviously, you and I, where we do agree, is that really, like I said, the United States has this system that they've laid out where the people who don't like capitalism can accuse it of being a capitalist system. It is not. It is fascism. People who love freedom can say, "Oh, it's a free country." It's not. But I wanted to get into something that's particularly disturbing on the medical front, and that is medical data. This is a trend that you're talking about. Not only do you get the privilege of spending a king's ransom for not even the best medical care in the world in the U.S., and I want to get to some trends on that in a moment, but now your data is being shared among all kinds of people. There's no privacy in the United States. If you don't know that, you're insane, but you think it's going to get worse.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's going to get much worse here. I mean, the whole thing is going.
How is
down.
medical data sharing going to get worse and even more invasive than it is now? I'd like to hear this.
Well, they're watching and looking at everything that you have no freedom. They're selling your data. Anybody could look up to see what your life is. They could also intrude in your life as well by selling. So they know what your deal is. So now they're hitting on you. And so they have an inside track on who you are, what you're doing, what you're spending, what your problems are. They're selling this stuff all over the place.
And of course, it's interesting that the people who are most aligned in the crony capitalist system, some of them are the internet gurus like Google that makes all of its money from selling people's data. Isn't that interesting that the people who are some of the newest players in the crony capitalist fascist game are the people who control the information in an era when the government is all too happy to steal any information from you it can and violate your privacy every way till Sunday?
That's right.
Let's talk about medical tourism, though. I haven't heard you talk a lot about this, but I look at this, I say, I go to Malaysia, I have tonsillitis, I go to the emergency room, they see me right away, I get pumped up with medications, I see an English-speaking doctor, I have a nurse follow me around, I take prescriptions home with me, it costs me $100 and some. And I say, here is much more of a free market system than the United States. What trends do you see? Because you are the great prognosticator, Gerald Celente. What trends do you see with people going overseas, even maybe some of these governments saying, we're going to force you to go overseas for medical care to save some dough?
I've been writing about medical tourism since back to 2006. It was the top trends that we were writing about back then. And it's a trend. You're going to see more and more of it happen as the systems become so terrible over here, and particularly in a lot of the most of the states. And you're going to see people, particularly the baby boomers, that are strapped on cash, can't get good service, going to other countries. It's going to be a huge trend, and we don't see any end of it in sight. So on both of the providing the services and getting the people there are going to be a lot of opportunities in it.
If you're advising someone who's young and they're saying, I want to go to school, I want to go to medical school, I want to rack up huge sums of debt or write a huge check if I'm lucky enough, and I want to become a physician, do you tell them, do you just slap them across the face and say, what are you thinking? Because there's not going to be a market for that?
Nah, because maybe they have a different passion for doing it. And, I can tell you that the physicians that I know are not very happy in what they're doing anymore, and they're dropping out early rather than staying late. So I'm old enough to remember when the doctor used to pay a visit to your house.
No more.
So it's their passion. That's their passion, and they believe in it. I wouldn't discourage them.
What if someone were to invest, though, what is the opportunity that you see? Do you see medical tourism of all stripes? Do you see people saying, "Hey, I need a heart procedure. I'm going to go somewhere because I have to do that"? Do you see a greater demand for cosmetic procedures? I mean, if you had to put your money somewhere, what would you pinpoint in the medical industry as a trend? Is the biggest trend?
Well, I'd say like dental would be a real big one. And the cosmetic to an extent, that's not going to go. That's always going to be there and be a big part of the society. But another one, like knee replacements, hip, that kind of thing. On the larger end of the more serious things. But dental is going to be a big one because a lot of this stuff isn't covered dental, and the older you get, the worse shape your teeth are in.
What is so fascinating, and we're speaking with Gerald Celente, TrendsJournal.com, is the United States and all these bankrupt Western countries, they have no idea about competition. It's funny. You go to these socialist countries, you have a problem with something, you try and get the government or whomever it is to fix the problem, and the answer is always, it's not my problem. There's no accountability, no responsibility, no sense of competition, why bother? And yet you're mentioning, hip replacements, knee replacements. There's like a different country for every one of those procedures that's trying to be the best. India is one of the best for heart procedures, and they're trying to specialize on that. Other countries are trying to do dental, like the Philippines, Mexico, etc. These countries are tripping over each other to compete because they understand that's the real free market, but the U.S. doesn't get it.
No, the U.S. doesn't. It's lost here. Oh, the other one, of course, is going to be cancer treatments and alternatives. I mean, that's going to be huge because cancer is the biggest killer out there. So that's going to be a big market. But again, out from the mainstream way of doing it. No, the United States is on the back burner of everything. I mean, we're not no longer the innovators. This is not the country of opportunity anymore. It's dead in the water. What's coming out of the States worth anything? So the system has been corrupted. It's not corporate influence in this system. It is the corporations running the country. You see, I'm not a libertarian. I believe in laws. It's like there are red lights. And there were laws put in place in this country that gave the people an even shot. There was the Robinson-Patman Act, the Sherman Antitrust Act, the Clayton Antitrust Act, the Glass-Steagall Act. It prohibited the robber barons from robbing everything. And it's the same, so to me, that's why we lost that edge. Because there's no longer competition. You get out of school, as I said, you mentioned about becoming a physician. That means you're going to have to work for some big conglomerate. You get out of school, what are you going to do? Get a job with Walmart? How about Staples or Home Depot or Lowe's or CVS? The big pharma, the big drugstores. They used to be private drugstores. So to me, and then again the trade issue. They had trade barriers up in tariffs, so multinationals couldn't go to cheap to labor countries, buy the products, and bring them back and sell them here. So to me, it has to be a restoration to see a future, again, of innovation. And so that's why I don't see it happening here.
Yeah, the one thing we do agree is innovation is dead in the United States. Like I said, we don't agree on everything. Gerald Celente is from the Trends Journal. I want to get to a few other things because I'm short on time, but let's come right back, and I want to finish up with some things. Gerald Celente, trendsjournal.com on the Nomad Capitalist Report. The Nomad Capitalist Report, we're back. Gerald Celente in our final few minutes here in the show talking about trends. His Trends Journal is the great prognostication publication, if I may say so, of the modern age. Gerald Celente, a couple more things in our last 5 minutes. You were talking before we took a break on minimum wage and the ability for people to make some dough in the United States. I see this as becoming increasingly difficult in a country that's bankrupt. And you wrote recently, I wanted to hear your thoughts on all these people who want a $15 an hour minimum wage. Fat chance, right?
Yeah, and again, it's not the minimum wage. You see, if there were wages, if the country was growing, the wage problem wouldn't be an issue. It's only an issue because of the multinationals owning so much of everything that you can't get a living wage. So in other words, what we're doing is we're supporting the multinationals, and here's how. They're not paying the workers anything. They can't afford health care. They can't afford rent. So what they're doing is they're going on food stamps. They're getting government assistance because they're making so little money. So the minimum wage really is it's a diversion. It's not about paying a minimum wage. It's about having opportunity for people to earn an income and to create their own future without working for one of the handful of the big multinationals that's running the country. And by the way, it's starting to happen throughout the Western countries. I mean, look what's going on in Italy. All the suicides, virtually every day, from business owners that are closing up. And Italy was the great country of the entrepreneur. But the multinationals keep moving in. And the austerity measures. So the minimum wage really isn't the issue. That becomes the political issue. The issue is there's no opportunity in the land of opportunity.
Don't you blame, I mean, forget the corporations, don't you blame the government for having a system that is crony capitalism, that rewards people who contribute to Obama, to Bush, to whomever the leaders are, the rulers in power? Don't you blame them for shuttering innovation, making it harder for people to start businesses, making it undesirable, and people like me and millions of others say, we're not going to pay your way, we're not going to pay for all of your nonsense, we're not going to pay for your mistakes, and we're going to go find somewhere where we're treated better. Don't you blame the government for putting those conditions in place to where I'm not going to hire anyone in the United States, minimum wage or not?
I blame the people. And I see it now I've seen this over and over again. You know, they've been pumping George W. Bush because he's become a painter, and they're showing his portraits off. Whether it's in the Financial Times, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, front page coverage. Like, you know, Bonzo learns to paint. The portrait. You know, the chimp all of a sudden learned how to draw. This guy should be brought up on war crime charges. But go back to the wars. 88% of the American people supported the Afghan war. The people support this stuff, and then when they get shafted, they start crying. But in the meantime, they support the corrupt systems. So I've been blaming more and more the lack of fight among the people.
The one thing, Ukraine is an example of this, we'll have to get to that another time, but the one trend that is coming up in the news this year, there's actually going to be an election in the UK, for instance, and I look at this as a guy who is a libertarian, as an anarchist, and saying this is a good thing, is the concept of breakaway states. We're seeing Scotland going to vote for whether they want to become their own country. Parts of Spain are moving forward on things like that. There are countries all around the world where little pieces want to break off and form their own sovereign nation. What trend do you see in doing this? Are there places where this could become a reality?
Well, we've been writing about secession for a while, and there was the real head over here in the States. Unfortunately, he passed away in December of 2012, and that was Thomas Naylor. And he was really the real head of the great secessionist movements that were beginning in the States, and they've kind of died down here. But look at what's going on in Catalonia. You mentioned Scotland. You're seeing it start to rise in Italy. Yeah, I see more and more breaking up of nations from, and you're going to start seeing it, by the way, in Ukraine. And that's kind of what Russia is pushing for. And so I think it's going to start happening there. You're going to start seeing more civil wars, more larger countries breaking up into smaller pieces. But, you know, and it's a much bigger issue than this, by the way. We're looking at a world that could explode at any moment. You know, this is like World War I, where you had a lot of imbeciles in charge, ready to, that destroyed Europe as it was flourishing and blossoming. And the same thing now. I mean, it's out of hand what's going on in Ukraine and the tough talk going back and forth between the West and Russia. You know, Russia's not Iraq or Libya. I mean, you know, if Napoleon or Hitler couldn't pull it off, they're going to fight the Russians. And then again, the Americans in the West don't know how this has really been fomented by the United States and Europe in destabilizing the Ukrainian government. So there's a lot going on here, and this thing could explode. The secessionist movements may become fallouts of this, but they may become minor comparing what could happen if this spins out of control.
Lastly, what opportunities do you see? Because this is something that we talk about a lot. I love the decentralization of powers, if there's got to be powers. What opportunities do you see for people, for example, if Scotland secedes, if other places secede? I mean, what do you see coming in that regard?
Self-sustaining economies.
Yeah.
Make it at home, buy it at home.
Gerald Celente, Trends Journal is the paper. What do we got to do to get you to become an expat anarchist? How do we get you to join the community, Gerald?
Well, I'm I'm fighting for the Second American Revolution over here. I just bought, and I believe in the Founding Fathers, and I honor thy Founding Fathers. No foreign entanglements. And to me, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be putting on an OccupyPeace.us movement that will be launching in the next Trends Journal. And we're encouraging every country to launch their own Occupy Peace movement. And so that's the foundation upon which I'm working at, to bring restore America and begin it by no foreign entanglements. Bring home the troops, bring home the money, and bring home the morality. Morality, not military might, is what I'm fighting for.
Well, with you on that, and always interesting, always entertaining, and you've made so many of the great projections throughout the years. Gerald Celente, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thank you, Andrew.
TrendsJournal.com is the website to find the Trends Journal. You should check it out, and NomadCapitalist.com, our site, for all the latest daily intelligence from around the world, protecting your money, growing your money. Find it at NomadCapitalist.com. I'm Andrew Henderson.